And you're welcome back again. Now, Nigeria's education sector is once again under intense scrutiny following a series of embarrassing and troubling disruptions to the 2025 UTME and WASSCE examinations. From the Joint Admission and Matriculations Board admitting to errors in thousands of UTME results, forcing over 370,000 students to retake the exams, to the West Africa Examinations Councils conducting late-night exams in some centers and cases of technical glitches and mismanagement. It has been a turbulent season for students, parents, and also integrity on the system. The Nigerian Bar Association has even waded in, calling for sanctions against WAEC and JAMB officials, citing incompetence, trauma to students, and long-term damage to the credibility of national examinations. The ripple effects of these incidents have sparked broader conversations about the quality, structure, and future of education in Nigeria, especially at a time when confidence in public institutions is waning.
And so joining us now is Dr. Joy Issa, an experienced educationist and the president of the Issa School of Education. She spent years in policy engagement and curriculum reform, and she joins us now to give or provide critical insight into this growing crisis. Doctor, welcome. I must say that this conversation is needed. Barely weeks after the shamble of JAMB's mass failure with the UTME, over 370,000 UTME candidates are asked to retake exams due to systemic errors. We're back here again with WAEC examinations and students having to write in darkness, in the dark of night, rather in the following morning. What does this say about, the institutional failures of our education sector? Are we seeing it fall before our eyes?
It's really sad that we're here again. The government knows what to do. Private sector knows what to do. Supposedly, we're very intelligent people in Nigeria, and we have systems in place to lead, to oversee, student engagement, to oversee assessments, and yet we keep finding ourselves in this position where our students are, functioning as if we're still in the 19th century or the 20th century. It's unbelievable that our children are required to take assessments in the dark. And if you saw some of those videos, they're all scrunched, bunched up together. How on earth are they not supposed to cheat? How on earth are they not supposed to, how are they supposed to survive? So it's almost like we, the adults, are setting up our children for failure. We're doing them a disservice, and we expect them to, uphold righteousness and have their moral compasses all pointing due north. We, the adults, we, the people in positions of power, must take responsibility for this. It's just terrible. I don't think it could ever happen in any other country, anywhere in the world. Where there are challenges with infrastructure, we then need to prepare. How can you ask children, by the way, no one's talking about the fact that they were there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to 12 midnight. What did they eat? What did they drink? So if someone has low blood sugar, if someone is feeling dehydrated, are they supposed to perform optimally? Then again, we will have children with poor results. And we're wondering why they can't get into our universities, they can't get into our schools. We really need to pause and say, look, are we ready to support our children? Or are we just, functioning like, what do you call them? Those rodents in the trundle wheel, just going round and round and round and round and round. We really must do better by our children.
Dr. Issa, I want to tell a story, which I think you might know about, from South Africa. The South African instance here is that during apartheid, there was no equal opportunity for black students to go to school. This caused an imbalance in their education, where after they had reached ages where they were eligible to have jobs, they couldn't find jobs because they were not as educated as the average white South African, or even foreigners in most cases, Nigerians who came into South Africa. This caused what we hear in most cases as xenophobia, because they felt that Nigerians and other nationalities were taking their jobs, not noting that they were ill-prepared, less educated for these jobs that they wanted to take. Now, this is a situation that's caused by the system there in South Africa from years from before, where apartheid was responsible. In this case in Nigeria, although it is not absolutely similar, we see a situation where our education system seems to be harming our children year after year. And this year is the biggest example, and very embarrassingly so. Down the line, what do we see these instances we're experiencing now? How do we see them affecting our children in the future when it comes to the opportunities that they may be presented with?
For us in Nigeria, our challenge is the divide between the children in the public school system and the children in the private school system. The divide continues to grow and increase. I remember in university, that I should have graduated in 1994, but because of strike and, strike action and etc., industrial action as it was called, I graduated in 1995. These days, a number of parents prefer to send their children to private universities, private schools, because they don't go off. There's consistency, and then there's an assurance of the quality of the education that the children will get. Scale it down to secondary school, even to primary school level, to nursery school. We're aware that our nursery school curriculum, as I will always talk about, does not exist formally. And so the private sector has outsourced that and has imported curricula from the US, from the UK, and pull these together to teach the children. So there is a big divide. There's a serious dichotomy between children who go to private schools and children who go to public schools in Nigeria. Having said that, we have seen over the years that it is the children who go to the public school system that come back and get into grassroots politics and get into community leadership and things like that. What do we expect them to deliver? What is the quality of engagement? What is the quality of thought that is put into systemic governance when at the foundation level we have not empowered these children to lead? We haven't taught them to think. We haven't taught them to solve problems. Therein lies our challenge. Over and over again, we see governments who have transformed their populace with good quality education, fixing the curriculum, working on teacher training, and scaling up. So yes, for us, it's not xenophobia, but I don't know what to call it, education phobia, because we have this big divide. It's incredible. A lot of children in the public school system, I beg your pardon, are leaving primary school not able to read. By age 10, 11, cannot read. In the private schools, they're reading at age 3, age 4. Reading simple words and all of that. So we have to, as a generation, take responsibility for this divide and bridge it. Otherwise, we're really setting up ourselves for major, major challenges in the next 10, 15 years.
Right. I mean, Doctor, you've set the premise for my next question, right? And the gentleman that just left the studio in our last interview, I was asking him about his time in university and how it's changed. And what he said really was technology has done, extremely well, but also there's information overload as well, which we're going to get into. We've seen JAMB try to adopt, technology into the examination process. They are the custodian of the matriculation exams for all of the universities here in Nigeria, but they have not been able to adopt technology brilliantly well, or even fair enough to be able to do this. There's still systemic errors that happens. There's WAEC, even though it's a written examination, there's still other factors that they're trying to make, adopt the technological part of it, and they failed completely. What more our curriculum and our students themselves to prepare them for the real world and an ever-changing world that is changing so fast with AI and everything else. If you're saying here that the public students are graduating, public education students are graduating without being able to read and write brilliantly or proficiently, how are we preparing our workforce for the future? But really about these bodies who are the custodians of our education sector.
Again, these bodies have to take responsibility, but the bodies do not work in isolation. The bodies work within a community. When we look at the adoption of technology in our schools, let's call it that way, the access again is not equitable. We have schools, even in big metropolitan cities like Lagos, where children are learning about computers theoretically, because there's no functioning computer in the school. These are public schools, even in a big city. In private schools, in some of the higher end private schools, for example, children come to school with their computers. So a child who has had a computer from age 5, age 6, and has been working with that device is more likely to complete their JAMB exam successfully than one who only saw a computer on a picture and handled the computer maybe once per month for their entire school time. So we have to step back and think, what are we doing? JAMB, before the children come to you, what is happening to them in the secondary schools and how have they been prepared to engage? If you think about technology, for example, a lot of those children have not used a computer, personal device. And then all of a sudden, with this high pressure, high stakes exam, you want me to use a computer to answer these questions? Where do I click? Where is ending? Where is refresh? Where is cancel? Where is backspace? They have no idea. So the adoption of technology needs to be systemic. You don't just bring it at the exam level. Absolutely not. That already puts the children that are disadvantaged at a further disadvantage. And then those that have access, you have given them an advantage. So we can't keep doing this to our children. Where the children don't have access, differentiate the exam. Why can't some of them still use, the paper-based exams like before? And where they have access, do that. That is when you're saying, okay, we're helping you. We want to know what you really know, what you can do, and we want to provide that entry, that gate for you into schools. Access is not equitable. Technology is not available to everyone. And so standardizing an exam based on technology already sets a lot of children back. And we can't keep doing that.
Well, Dr. Joy, I think the UTMEs actually set two exams. They set one for the candidates and then they set one for themselves. If we take a look at it, they've actually absolutely failed when it comes to what they sat for. When it comes to the technology they intended to use and all of that. So we have their scorecard on that. Now, where does the responsibility lie now if the gatekeepers themselves are failing? Are we looking at a situation perhaps where the UTMEs or JAMB itself is no longer the gatekeeper, where it is scrapped? Do we put this responsibility on the universities, the places of entry? Perhaps maybe we focus on their entry examinations. I'm sure they have some of these going on now, but the UTMEs are still the one sure way of getting an across-board examination of every single student that's going into the tertiary institution. But is it still relevant at this point? Do we look at the institutions now and say, the ball now stops with you, go ahead, let's see what entry exams with you is going to be like?
That is my absolute recommendation. Every university, come up with your entry criteria, because at the end of the day, the university rankings depend on the quality of their graduates. So if a university's time, energy, and effort into employing the right faculty, providing the right resources, making sure that children have access to good quality education, they should create their own entry gateways, as you have put it.
I mean, they already have the post-UTME examinations that they do for candidates who already passed the exams, go in, they do the post-UTME, and they set their own scorecard for all the departments.
Exactly. So why don't we just remove this almighty pressure of UTME? I mean, you have children writing JAMB 3-4 times. And why are they writing JAMB 3-4 times? Can we even go there? Because they are from a certain state that is ranked higher than another state. And so someone from maybe a state in the south has to take a UTME 3-4 times because his or her cutoff score is not high enough for entry into maybe the particular university, but someone from maybe other states will have a much lower score and get entry and access. Again, can we really look at this? I know at a certain point in time, that was a useful way to sort of decentralize, entry into schools, be considerate of different literacy levels, etc. But for the private universities, come on, the children pay their fees. So why do they still have to use JAMB as the entry criteria? Let them set their own assessments. That's what the private schools are doing, and it has really made life easier. I know there will be challenges, but we cannot continue to rely on a failing system. And all of us will sit back and fail our children. I think the private universities, the private schools, this is the time to rise up and put our foot down. There are associations that can rise up and say, you know what, for the universities that belong to this association, let's do this.
WAEC is a completely different conversation. As we're talking about JAMB, let's bring WAEC into this discussion, right? Years, they've had years, they've been doing this for years. They are the custodian of the examinations for senior secondary school into universities. For West Africa, this incident that happened where the children had to wait from 9 a.m. all the way down to midnight to write their examinations, one has to ask, is this a Nigeria problem? Or is it a West African issue? And should WAEC be on the chopping block at this point?
It's primarily a Nigerian issue.
I was hoping it was not. I was hoping it was not.
Unfortunately, it is our infrastructure, it is our systems, because this is just a matter of tools. So we're not saying the exam portal failed. We're saying there's no light. We're not saying the exam portal was inaccessible. There was no internet. Those are our issues. And if we don't fix our infrastructural issues, then we shouldn't be upset that our children want to japa and go to Ghana and go to other places to go to school. You'll be amazed at the number of Nigerian children going to school in Lowe, just next door, and in Ghana, to other countries across West Africa, instead of going to our schools. It's incredible. And we're supposed to be the giant of Africa. I think we should change our name.
Ooh.
I don't know what it should be, but
no, I'm still giant too. I'm still giant too.
You came for all of us.
Well, let's say in education, we're not the giants. Well, when we go abroad, we thrive, we excel. The number of Nigerian children who are head boy, head girl in secondary schools abroad, who are head of this department, head of that department, in universities, in academia is incredible. What is happening internally? Why do I have to go abroad to become HOD somewhere? Why do I have to go up to thrive? Because there's the opportunity for somebody who thinks differently, who will not cram on Paul.
Okay.
Mazzino, just a sec.
Go ahead,
I wanted to. You have been developing curriculums, teaching. You have a school, a college of education, pretty much just teaching teachers as well. And so one has to ask about our curriculum. Is the conversation back on board at the national level when it comes to our curriculum and the ever-changing tides with technology?
Well, to be fair, it is. Our current Minister of Education invited some of us private sector stakeholders. I went representing APEN, the Association of Private Educators in Nigeria. I happened to be on the advocacy committee. And the minister invited about 10 or 12 private sector players to come in and have a conversation around the curriculum. And I remember the NERDC chair was there. And yes, there is a future review planned. However, the problem is the curriculum has already been reviewed by the committee and basically it's done. Where was like the minister said, why did we not invite the private sector into this discourse? Because in some states, 70% of our children are trained in the private schools, not in the public schools. So if that is the case, what are we doing for those teaching? The teachers were graduating from these NCEs and these colleges. Are we bringing out teachers that can cope with this higher standard of education? Or are we graduating teachers based on the old, like I like to say, 1945 curriculum for the teacher training institutes? And he called out NTI, he called out a lot of the institutes saying, you guys are not doing what you're supposed to be doing to upgrade, which is why the private sector keeps outsourcing training. We keep going abroad to train and come back. We keep, creating, developing our own things. But majority of the initial teacher training still lies with the national and state and federal colleges of education. If that is not fixed, again, I say, we will keep on perpetuating this ineptitude. I like to say that because for me, that's the best way to describe what we're doing. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again. We all know what that equates to. And yet here we are, still doing the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. We have to think differently. So the public, the Ministry of Education has reached out and is trying to find, opportunities to collaborate to make these things happen. It's a slow moving wheel. And like one former president said, I used to think governance was like, a speedboat, you just turn it. But I realized governance is like moving a super yacht. If you turn it too quickly, you're going to throw some people off. So you have to turn it really slow. My challenge is I don't think anybody has started turning. We're just having all these symposia and talking about things. I don't see any concrete forward movement. And I don't think the government can spearhead it. I do think that the private sector with strategic partnerships will spearhead innovation and transformation of education in this country.
Right. But
more of us need to talk and collaborate on this.
Dr. Joy, my own fear is that as private sector is coming in, they democratize education, right? Because when the private sector comes in, they are still profit-making, ventures, and they still have to make money. They're building schools that they're paying in dollars and pounds. I don't understand, and this just erodes public trust in our education system. And so, what's left for the common man, and what's left for our future of the nation? Because the middle class is slowly dwindling, the lower class is expanding. A dollar is one to. Doctor, thank you for coming.
This is why I'm talking about partnerships. This is why I talk about partnerships. We need more of these private schools to adopt the public schools. And that's one of the things we propose, APEN proposed to the minister, to say, look, can you allow us work? Because some of these private schools, a simple example, the private school is starting in a house. Meanwhile, there's a public school down the road that has a field, has big space and all. If you allow this strategic partnership, then from some of the funds raised in the private school, they train the teachers in the public school, they leverage some of their infrastructure, and in that collaborative way, there is improvement. All the children improve. But I promise you, to send a pack of biscuits to a public school, to do anything, send books, they can't just accept things. It has to go to district head, and then the district one head has to talk to the supervisor, and supervisor has to go to the ministry and mission. It's incredible, the bureaucracy.
Yeah, and again, it's just Nigeria, standard Nigeria, bureaucracy and red tape is just insane. Doctor, I wish there was enough time for us to continue, but we'll continue to have these discussions as much as we can. Education is one of the key priorities here at Breakfast Extra, and we always appreciate you every single time you take up on that invitation. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much,
Dr. Joy Issa, as an education, is joining us live from Abuja.